Welcome back. This is the third installment of the study of Ruth that we started a couple of weeks ago, and getting to it a bit late today, but I was able to get to it, so I'm glad that we'll be able to complete this third chapter, and hopefully next week we will complete the fourth chapter, which is the last book of Ruth, and we will do a summary and see how it all ties together. Just a quick review with the first two chapters that we started with. We find this family, Elimelech's the husband, and he is in Bethlehem, and there's a famine in the land. And it's so bad that he decides to take his family to Moab. And we talked about how Moab was an ungodly place, and Elimelech made a wrong decision. He kind of showed his cards a little bit about how serious he was a follower of the Lord. We don't know for sure if he was a godly man, but we do know that he made a wrong decision by going to Moab. You should never take your family. You should never make a decision when you're in the battle of a trial that would take you out of God's presence, that would take you away from His people, that would alienate you from being able to be under the protection of God. And he did that. As a result, his wife Naomi was left without a husband, and her two sons passed away. So while they were in Moab, over the course of 10 years or so, Naomi lost her two sons and her husband. Can you imagine how hard and how difficult that was, and especially during a time where there was not a system of support government-wise for widows, for people who are in need, the way she was definitely in need at that time. During that time, women didn't really work outside the home. They had certain tasks that they did, and there were a few circumstances where women had gainful employment, but for the most part, women depended on their husbands and their family. And that's a wonderful thing because God instituted that system. Children are able to be reared in a way, and the home is able to be kept in such a way when that is possible. But in today's world, that is almost impossible to do. But she found herself totally broken. Have you ever felt totally broken before? I mean, I certainly have many, many times. Sadly to say, many of my times that I have felt broken is because of my own hand. I've done something, I have sinned, I have went against God's commands knowingly, and it has broken me. In my earlier days, I spent a lot of my time broken. But God is faithful, and God is gracious, and He deals with His people on their level. He deals with them where they need to be dealt with, and He knows how to get them where He needs them to go. And He certainly knew where He wanted Naomi to go. He wanted Naomi to go back to Bethlehem, and so that's exactly what she did. The Bible says that she realized that the famine was loosening, and there was now abundance of food in Bethlehem and in Israel, so she decided to leave. There was nothing left for her in Moab. There were no godly people there to talk to. There were no Jewish places of worship. There was nothing for her there. So she decided to leave, and she didn't want either one of her daughters-in-laws to go, but one named Ruth clung to her, and she promised Naomi that she would never leave her, no matter how hard it got. She said she's going to forsake her family, her friends, her land, her gods, to go with Naomi to be with her family, her friends, her land, her people, and her God. And it wasn't just temporary. She said, even Naomi, if you die, this is where I want to be. I want to be among your people. And what we see is through the 10 years or however long Naomi and Ruth were together in a family unit, definitely Naomi was able to influence Ruth to the point where it sold her out to God, and it sold her out to the good things of God. And don't we want to be if you're a Christian, don't you want to be someone who, over the course of your life, you are someone that is pointing people to Christ. You are someone that is leading people in the direction of the cross. And we can do that in many ways. We can do that the way we talk. We can do that by the way we say things, some of the things that we do. But our day in, day out reactions to the trials and the storms and the challenges of our life, that is what is going to lead someone towards Christ, or it's going to push someone away from Christ. If someone sees you pronouncing that you're a Christian, but then every time something happens in your life, you fall apart and you just go the way of the world and you seek only worldly solutions to your problems, and you're constantly in an upset condition, you're constantly not telling people and reminding people that, yes, I may be going through a storm, but God is good. God is going to take us through this, and God is going to see us through this. Then they're not going to see very much to follow. And so we don't want to be that way. But evidently Naomi was a person who put her money where her mouth was, so to speak. She convinced Ruth that God was worth serving. And so now they're back in Bethlehem, and they don't have a way to make, they don't have a way to get sustenance. They don't have a way to get food to put on the table. Evidently, they still have a home, and under Jewish law, families were able to keep their land. Even if they sold it for a time, they could get it back. It was never anything that was permanent. And so evidently they go back and they're able to find, at least either they're staying with the family or they're in their own home, the one that they left 10 years before, but they still did not have a way to make a living. They did not have a way to earn enough money or to have a way to put food on the table. So we find that Ruth, this young girl, probably 18 to 22, in that range, she gets up and she's not just sitting around waiting for God to hand her something. She's not waiting for the neighbors to come around and deliver them food and to take care of them. She gets up and she takes charge, and she asks Naomi if it's okay for her to go out and glean in the fields. And that's what she does. She goes out into the fields because it's during the barley harvest, the Bible says, when they got back into Bethlehem. And she happens to come across the field that's owned by a man named Boaz. And Boaz was a very godly man. He greeted his workers every day with a godly salutation. He would say, "How are you? May God be with you today. May God bless you in your efforts today." We talked about trying to be more like Boaz in the way we deal with everyday life. Don't we want to be people that, when it's all said and done about our lives, we can say, that man or that woman, they had the praises of God on their lips at all times. No matter if it was a good day, they were praising God. If it was a bad day for them, they were praising God. They were people who loved to praise God. And Boaz was someone like that. So we see that Boaz was a very godly, very upstanding, moral man. Naomi sent Ruth out. They did not know where she was going. She didn't say, go to this guy's land named Boaz. This was all totally unknown. But God directed Ruth's path providentially. God directed Ruth's path to this plot of land. And Boaz sees her and gives her protection. He says, don't go to anybody else's field. You stay right here with my field. Stay with my men. Stay with my women that are helping me harvest my crop. I have told them, do not harm you, to make things easy for you, and you are safe here. So obviously Boaz was won over immediately by the character of Ruth. We read that he says that their whole town, Bethlehem, knew about Ruth and knew about what Ruth gave up to follow Naomi back home. And it was a very honorable thing, and they were very impressed with this Moabitess. So we want to be people that when people talk about their character, when people talk about your character, what do they say? When people think about your name, what do they think about? And only we know that for sure. There was a time in my life before Jesus when people thought about me, they thought about things that were not honorable. They thought about things that were not godly, to my shame. But God is so gracious and He is so good. And through many years, He worked with me and He won me over in Christ. He had to do it by breaking me in many ways. And that's another story for another lesson. But through many years, He broke me. And He developed in me a love for Him and His presence. And I hope and pray that people, when they think of me today, they think of me as someone not perfect by any means. Wow, am I not perfect? But somebody that they say, you know what, for all of his failings, he does love the Lord, and the Lord has touched him, and he does intend on honoring and glorifying God with his life. I hope and pray that people say that. I really hope and pray that my family sees that in me, because that is a burden of mine. I want to be helpful to my family. Not just my 2 children and my wife, but my aunts and uncles and my cousins and people around me. I have a burden to be someone that has strong shoulders spiritually. So Boaz sees this in Ruth. And that's where we end the 2nd chapter. So I'm going to read the 3rd chapter, and we're going to get into a little bit about that and discuss that. And then next week we will finish the lesson. So I'm going to read chapter 3 of the book of Ruth. Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, shouldn't I find security for you so that you will be taken care of? Now, isn't Boaz our relative? Haven't you been working with his female servants? This evening he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfumed oil, and wear your best clothes. Go down to the threshing floor, but don't let the man know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, notice the place where he's lying. Go in and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will explain to you what you should do." So Ruth said to her, "I will do everything that you say." She went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law had instructed her. After Boaz ate, drank, and was good in spirits, he went to lie down at the end of the pile of barley. Then she went in secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. At midnight, Boaz was startled, turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. So he asked, "Who are you?" "I am Ruth, your slave," she replied. "Spread your cloak over me, for you are a family redeemer." Then he said, "May the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before, because you have not pursued younger men, whether rich or poor. Now don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say. Since all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character, yes, it is true that I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer closer than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will. Now lie down until the morning." So she lay down at his feet until morning, but got up while it was dark. Then Boaz said, "Don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor." And he told Ruth, "Bring the shawl you're wearing and hold it out." When she held it out, he shoveled 6 measures of barley into the shawl, and she went into the town. She went into her mother-in-law's home, Naomi, and who asked her, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then Ruth told her everything the man had done for her. She said, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley because he said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Naomi said, "My daughter, wait until you find out how things go, for he will not rest until he resolves this today." Now that is a lot of things to discuss. One of the things to bring out is, look at how Naomi wanted to take care of Ruth. Naomi was still young enough to marry. She mentioned that and alluded to that in chapter 1 or 2, where she said, even if I get married today and have children, will you wait on them? She was trying to talk her 2 daughters-in-law out of following her back to her home. But we see that she had more desire to take care of Ruth. She had more desire after her welfare. How often do we see ourselves others focused, where we want to take care of others before we take care of ourselves? I'll admit sometimes I see myself doing that to some degree, but I know that I've got a long, long way to go. God is still working in my life, and I can still be a very selfish person. Usually when things go bad, if I get mistreated, if I feel slighted in some way by somebody, it's very easy for me to revert back to the flesh, so to speak, and I can easily start being offended, and I can start wanting to take up for my rights and my what's coming to me, what I deserve, so to speak. But God says that's not part of a godly character at all. If you really want to be someone of godly character, you're going to be someone like Christ. He came on this earth to serve. He came because of other people's needs. He didn't come because he needed anything. He was perfect in every way. He was perfect without sin, but he condescended himself, the Bible said. He lowered himself and humbled himself, the Bible says, and he came in the form of a man. Now here is deity. Here is a God, perfect in every way, deciding to take on flesh, to walk on dirty streets, to get tired, to get hungry, to sleep on rocks, and he slept out in the wild a lot of times when he was doing his ministry. And ultimately he got beat, he got whipped, he got put on a cross, and it was all for the betterment of those that he loved. And it's you and I that he did that for. And he had my name on his mind when he was hanging on that cross. That's hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to believe that he had Chase Weatherly's his name and his face. He saw me while he was hanging on that cross before I was even born. He was doing it for me. He was doing it for you. He was doing it for those that we know. How others focused is that? I mean, that's the perfect example of being others focused is our Christ Jesus. But Naomi was others focused here in this story because she was really more concerned about Ruth and what would happen to her after Naomi passed away. She wanted to secure Ruth's future. So she said, look, you have found a godly man in Boaz. You happened to cross his field. To them, this was all by chance, but we know that it wasn't by chance. God providentially worked all of this out. But Naomi recognized who Boaz was because of his godly character, and she said, yes, he is a kinsman redeemer. He is a kinsman redeemer, and he can redeem you and take you to be his wife because your past husband was his kin. And that was a rule that was instituted by God to preserve family lines. And it was a thing that when people lost their livelihood, if people lost land that they had, or if they come in hard times, they would go to what they call a family redeemer or a kinsman redeemer to get help. If someone was murdered in their family, if a man was murdered and a husband was taken from a family and they were left with children, it was the kinsman redeemer's responsibility not only to help that family and to marry that widow, but it was also his responsibility to avenge that death if it was a wrongful death. So there's times back then that's different than today. But Boaz was a kinsman redeemer of this family. So Naomi told Ruth, just hold still. He's going to make sure either way, whether this other person who has first chance at this to help you, whether he decides to be your kinsman redeemer, either he or Boaz by the end of this day will do it. But let's talk about this third chapter, and let's talk about one thing. Think about when you're most desperate. Think about when you're most desperate in life. That is the time when you're most open to making mistakes. If you're not careful, your emotions can get the best of you, and you can make wrong decisions, or you can even give people you love bad advice. And I will propose to you today that Naomi gave Ruth bad advice. How did she do that? She told Naomi, go to Boaz's field. He's going to be there tonight because it's the end of the harvest. They've got all of their grain piled up and they're winnowing it out. Basically what they were doing is taking buckets of it and throwing it up in the air and allowing all the chaff and all the dirt to fly away. And they would do that over and over, and basically it would cleanse the seed. It would make it more pure seed, and it would have less chaff. It would have less dirt. It would have less sticks in it. He was purifying his seed so that he could go and sell it, or he could go and put it up in storage. And this was done at night. And the Bible tells us that during those times, a lot of times, men would get drunk. They would, you'd have a lot of men together doing this. This was mostly a manly thing. And a lot of men gathered together drinking. You can imagine some of the things that would be possible for a young woman if she was thrust into a situation like this. And Naomi said, go put on perfume, put on your best clothes, dress up, make yourself look beautiful, and go and find Boaz. Wait till he goes to sleep. He's going to be covered up. Pull back his quilt, so to speak, and place yourself, lay down at his feet. And when he wakes up, tell him that you want him to redeem you as to being a kinsman redeemer. That was a very unwise thing to do, because how easily could it have been that someone saw Ruth go there and get the wrong idea? Her whole character would have been tarnished. Not only her character could have been tarnished, but Boaz, after she laid at his feet, if somebody just happened to come by and see that instance, if they were to see this young woman laying at the feet of Boaz, Boaz had a wonderful, he worked all his life to have a godly character, to have a godly influence in that town, in Bethlehem. And it could have all been taken from him by this poor advice from Naomi. Now, Naomi didn't mean it to be poor advice. She wasn't meaning for her to go and do anything immoral at all. But she should have thought about what she was asking Ruth to do. And it's an example of being so scared, being so fervently upset with the conditions going around you that that's the time it's easy to take your eyes off God. And when we take our eyes off God, it's like Peter walking on the water. Remember, when Peter walked on the water, he had his eyes fixed on Christ. The waves were churning, the waves were pounding, but the Bible says as long as Peter's eyes were on Christ, he was walking on water like Christ. But the minute he took his eyes off of Peter, the Bible says he began to sink. And what does that tell us? Well, the waves represent the waves of our life. If we want to be people like Peter that walk on the water, we want to walk with God in the good times and in the bad times, we have to maintain our focus on Christ. And when the waves are churning hardest in our lives, that is when we're most susceptible to making decisions and taking our eyes off of Christ and putting them more on the problem that we have. And that's when the devil can come in and our flesh can come in and get us to make poor decisions. But look at how awesome God is. God allowed this situation to turn out okay. He knew the heart of Ruth. He knew the heart of Boaz. He knew that there was nothing immoral going on. He knew that there was nothing immoral in their desires. Boaz was very attracted not necessarily to Ruth's physical appearance. He was attracted to her godly character. That's what he says. He says, everybody knows what type of woman you are, Ruth, because of how you left everything that you knew. You left your God, you left your people, you left everything you knew in the land of Moab, and you came to help Naomi and to be with her regardless of how bad it got. He said that is a noble character. And so he was more taken back by that than any type of physical appearance that Ruth may have had. We don't know if Ruth was a very pretty lady. Think about this. 6 measures of barley. Now, the word, if you go back into the original text and you do the math, 6 measures of barley weighs between 60 and 80 pounds. And the Bible says that Boaz gave Ruth 60 to 80 pounds of barley to take back into town, and she was able to tote it. She was country strong, okay? So think about some lady that's able to pick up and carry 60 to 80 pounds of barley. Now, a lot of times there's ladies that work out and there's ladies that have that ability, but normally if a lady's able to pick up 70 pounds or so, she is stout. She is stout. And so that's one thing that we can kind of see there. So the reason I say that is not to harp on physical appearance, but what I want to say is I want to point out that Boaz was attracted to her godly character. For younger people in my life, for younger people in my family, in the sphere that I dwell in at my church, in my home, I have younger people at work that I deal with sometimes. I always try to influence them in such a way that I hope and pray that they are attracted to godly character more than they are physical appearances. Because our physical nature, when we're young, even if God blesses us with a beautiful body and a beautiful face and everything that's attractive to man, at some point in time, I think we all know if we're older and we're getting in our 40s and our 50s and even older than that, the physical doesn't last all that long. So what does last is a godly character. And so if you attract yourself to godly character attributes, you won't go wrong. And Boaz was attracted to Ruth's godly character more than he was any type of physical appearance. So we see that. But understand that Naomi, not meaning to, gave Ruth some poor advice, because this could have went bad quickly. It could have ruined Ruth's witness. It could have ruined Boaz's witness. And it would have been all innocent, but the way it looked. The Bible says that Christians we are supposed to run and flee from the very appearance of evil. Not only are we not to do evil things, we're not even supposed to be put in a situation where people could even think that we're doing something evil. And we all have times where we could do better at that. The things we watch on TV, the places we go, sometimes the people we hang around with will show people, or it will point to people, character issues or character traits. And so be aware of that. Be aware that if you're a child of God and you want to glorify God, one of the things we need to do is we need to make sure we keep our eyes on God, especially during the hard times, because that's when we're most prone to take our eyes off God and make a mistake. So bringing it down personal here, this week has been a very hard week for me and my family. Today is Saturday. This past Monday, Mom called early in the morning and she was having some health issues. And she said, I need you to come and take me to the ER. So I took her to the ER and come to find out her heart was she was having arrhythmia and she was about to die. They had to shock her heart and they were able to get it stabilized, but immediately she started going back downhill. They gave her some medicine to stabilize her further. She was able to get to Little Rock to Baptist Medical, and they went in and did a cath procedure, and they put a stent in. She has some stents, but they put in another stent. And currently, right now, she's stable. She is her vital signs and her overall, all of her organs and everything, they're in good. They're in a good state, but she's not out of the woods. She's not out of the woods. And so this week has been very long and hard, not just for me, but for my aunt, my uncles, my wife, my children. And it's a very scary time. We're not alone in this. There are other people going through this. But think about how this COVID-19 virus has changed things. One of the ways it's changed things is you can't go into an emergency room. You can't go into and visit your family member, even if they're in an ICU unit. All you have is the ability to call them if they're able to call. Sometimes Mom's been able to call and talk. Sometimes when she talks, I can barely understand her. Sometimes when she talks, it's so weak that I can't even hardly hear her. And so I'm left with playing what if. And if I play the what if game, I find myself getting on a very slippery slope. So I have to continually remind myself, Chase, keep your eyes on Christ. Chase, keep your eyes on Christ, because you may not be able to go into that ICU unit. You may not be able to be with your mother physically, but Jesus, they cannot say, stay out. Jesus is with Mom, and Jesus is with us as well, and He sees all of this. And so this is a real world, real life experience of a storm in our life. And I can see the tendency to be like Naomi and let my emotions get the better of me. And if my emotions get the better of me, I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to make an error. I'm going to let my mouth say things that is not glorifying of God. I'm going to let my actions do things that are not wise and not glorifying of God. And so I constantly am trying to make myself aware of this. But one of the things that I've seen this week, not only is God taking care of Mom, not only is God with Mom, but He also knows where I'm weak. He also knows where I need help. And I've been praying, I've been seeking God. And when you pray and seek God for help and you're sincere about it, He will show up. Providentially, He has brought people into my life this past week to give me comfort. Today, to this very day, Hannah, my daughter, she called me because I was having a hard time because I wasn't able to get any word from the doctors or the nurses today. Today's Saturday, and they're shorthanded, and so I haven't heard from them at all today. And so I was really spiraling a little bit because I talked to Mom, and she was very weak, and it seems like everything is just going real slow. And lo and behold, Hannah calls, and she talks to Allie, and Allie's getting the lowdown on it, and then she hands the phone to me, and Hannah, she's an RN if you don't know, and she's worked in Baptist before for a long time, and she's worked in the surgical ICU unit right next to where Mama is. Mama's in the cardiac ICU unit. They're actually in the same area. And so Hannah's very familiar with the nurses there. She's very familiar with the doctors. And Hannah literally went down the list from head to toe of what was going on with Mama, and saying, you know what, overall this is not a big deal. What you think here is a big deal, that's not a big deal. That's normal. That's common. I'm not concerned about that at all. And she was able to relieve my stress and to relieve my nerves in a way that nobody else could have done at that time. And God sent her to me. And she may not have known how much that meant to me, but I do know that God sent Hannah to me because I was really upset. I was so upset that I wasn't able to do this video. Normally I do it in the morning, but I kept putting it off because I knew I wasn't mentally and spiritually in a state where I could do it and be well at it. And I knew anytime you teach God's Word, anytime you try to relay God's Word, you need to take that serious, and you need to be in the right frame of mind when you present God's Word, because you will be specially judged anytime you teach God's Word. And I knew I was not in a state of mind to get before anybody, whoever may watch this video, and do a good job, do an honorable job. But it took Hannah. Thank you, Hannah, if you ever see this. It took her to be able to calm my nerves and to soothe me, so to speak. And after that, I was able to calm down, and I realized I was able to come in here and do this video. And I was definitely going to bring out that point, because that's God today. We're reading about Ruth and Naomi and Boaz, something that happened 2,500 years ago. But God that was back then, Jehovah God that was back then, is still alive today. And He's still alive today. And if He worked in Ruth's life, if He worked in Naomi's life, if He worked in Boaz's life back then, He's going to work in your life today if you call on Him. if you seek Him out with all of your heart. And He is true, and He is faithful, and He is kind, and He is ready and willing and able to deliver you. He may not take you out of the fire. Mama is still in ICU. She's still not out of the woods physically. But no matter what happens to Mom, I know that she is saved. And I told her in Camden on Monday, when she was really thinking that she could be leaving this world. I said, Mama, no matter what, I know that you're going to be a winner. When you're a child of God, you're going to be a winner either way, whether you are still here on this earth tomorrow or whether God calls you home, you are going to be a winner. And don't you want to be secure in that? Don't you want your spirit to be secure in eternity? Because the bad things that happen on this earth, the trials and the troubles and the tribulations that happen on this earth, they're temporary. The Bible says they're just a speck of time in your existence. And even if you're not a saved Christian, you're going to exist somewhere eternally. Think about how long eternity is. Hunter used to get really scared when I would teach him about eternity because he couldn't wrap his mind around it. Hunter is the type of person, he wants to be able to wrap his mind. He wants to be able to have a good understanding of where he's going. He's very structured. He wants a time frame for everything. He wants a time frame for when he's going fishing. He wants a time frame for when we're going to go eat, what we're going to eat, when is it going to be taken out of the oven. He's structured. And so eternity is something that you can't jot down on a calendar. I mean, it's just from now on until, it's not until a certain time, it's forever. And that was just really hard for him to grasp. And I understand that. And how important it is for us to understand that if we get everything wrong in this life, if we get everything wrong in this life, but we get our salvation right, then our eternity is taken care of. And compared to eternity, your entire life, you may be 80, 90. There are people who are 100 years old. But compared to eternity, that's not even a speck of sand on the earth compared to how much time you're going to spend somewhere. And so we're going to spend it in one or two places. We're either going to spend it in the presence of God, praising His holy name forever. Isn't that just brings chill bumps to me, knowing that I'm going to be able to be in God's presence one day with God's people and God's angels, and we're going to be praising and glorifying the name of God forever. If that doesn't excite you, you need to ask God to give you a heart and a hunger for that, because that's what Christians are going to be doing. That's awesome. That's an awesome thought. Or if you die and you are not right with God, so sad that the eternity that awaits people who are not right with God is an eternity of utter torment, of utter torture, sadness, aloneness, fear, anxiety. The worst thing you can think of, multiply it times infinity, and that's what eternity for those without Christ is going to be. So let us learn through Ruth and through Naomi what's important in life, and when storms come our way, how God will be with us through the storms. He may not be with us in the way we think He should be with us. I would love to have prayed, and Mom would have her heart would have been healed on Monday, and she would have been back home mowing the yard on Tuesday. She loves mowing. But that's not so. She's still in ICU. So we don't know how this is going to end. It looks like she's getting out of the woods. It looks like everything is turning out the right way, but we don't know yet. But we have a God that knows. We have a God that knows exactly what's going to happen. And I trust Him completely and 100%. And He has done nothing but deliver for us and our family. He has never left us or forsaken us. And I know for sure He is never going to leave us or forsake us now. So I hope this lesson has encouraged you. I hope that I brought out some things to think about. Next week, we will finish the book of Ruth. And next week, we will tie it all together. And what we're going to talk about is providence. We're going to talk about the providence of God. And so be thinking about that. If you don't know what the word providence means, try to find out what that word means and start thinking about it. God works in two different ways on this earth. He either works in miracles or He works providentially. And miracles are when He overcomes the natural laws of this world and He overrules what the natural laws are saying, and He says, no, you're not dead. No, your cancer is not going to kill you. I'm going to remove this cancer from you. No, the blind eyes that you have, the doctors don't know what to do, but I can give you new eyes, physical eyes. He can do supernatural things just like that. But God doesn't always work miraculously, does He? We wish He did. Man, that would be awesome if we could pray every single prayer and pray a prayer of faith and know that we could have a miracle waiting on us instantly. But God doesn't always work that way. The way He mostly works, the majority of the time, He works providentially. And providentially is no less miraculous, really. It's really miracles, but it's miracles done behind the scenes. He works behind the scenes. So when God works providentially, He does not show you everything. So when you're going through something, when Naomi was in Moab, she had no idea that they were going to eventually make their way back to Bethlehem. She had no idea that Ruth was going to stay with her. She had no idea that Ruth was going to find Boaz. She had no idea that Boaz was going to marry Ruth. And next chapter, she's going to find there's going to be some more things brought out that's going to be even more glorious. God had something planned for Naomi that her wildest dreams couldn't even imagine. If you haven't read the last chapter of Ruth, go ahead and read it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But until then, thank you for listening to me. I know I ramble, but I hope I was able to bring home some things that are useful to you and will help you get closer to the Lord. Until next week, if God allows it, I'll be back and we'll finish the last chapter of Ruth. Have a wonderful and blessed day. Thank you.